Hey everyone, Craig Runes here, back with another video. In this video I'm going to talk about adding subs to your bass line. I've noticed with a lot of the tracks that people are sending into the SoundCloud listening page, a lot of them are really missing that low end, that sort of feeling when you're in the club that you can feel the bass, not just hear it. So I think this is like a really simple thing that it's not like crazy production or anything, but it's something that can really make your track go from sounding good to sounding great. It just adds that low end, it makes it feel more powerful. Just a couple of things you have to do when you're making it and when you're adding it to your tracks is just to make sure that you EQ it heavily, and then you just like shape the sound a lot, because if you just put a sub in there, it can just eat up a lot of headroom, and then you spend all your time sort of juggling the space to make sure everything sits. So this way it's everything will fit in there. So this is just a remix that I'm doing. I'll just mute the vocal, we don't really need to hear it. So here's a little bit of the track. So there you go. It's just, we've got like a low mid bass, sort of squelchy bass sound, and then I've got the sub underneath it. So I'll just play you the low mid bass. If I go like this, you'll be able to see, this is sort of see where it sits. And on that channel I've just got EQ, PSP vintage warmer, and a little bit of compression. So yeah, it sounds good. There's a little bit of bass in there, but I found when I played it on a couple of systems, it just sort of lacked that sort of the boost and like the real low end weight to it. I compared it to a couple other tracks, and that's what I could sort of I could hear that it was missing that. So what I've done is, I'm not going to show you a tutorial on how to make a sub, because if you go on YouTube there's like a billion of them on there. So you guys can just choose which one you want. If you use massive, or if you use a sample, or whatever, you can just use that. For me, I've just used the same one that I always use, the Sine sub drive, and that's just a factory bass, synth bass, and it's just down here. So it's just a preset within, so it's just playing samples because it's EXS24. It's just playing the sample, but it's one of the built-in ones, so it plays a lot better. And I've just got it, so if I show you the MIDI, I've got the original MIDI sitting around just below C2, and then the sub sitting just below C2 as well. Sometimes you might need to drop it down an octave or whatever, just depending on the original sound. So the sub, you're probably going to need either monitors or headphones to be able to hear it, but you can hear sort of the top end's a little bit fuzzy, and it's just something that I've put on with the saturator. So if I take all these off, and the reason why I've got it going into the bus is because I've got a bunch of down here I've got like bass edits, like the sub bass edits to go along with the sort of the lead synth line. So if I take all them off, you can kind of hear it. If I just take these off as well, it sounds pretty round. You can see there we've got a little bit of dynamic range, but you might not be able to hear it if you just listen on your laptop speakers. One thing that I find most important when you're adding a sub is the EQ. So as you can see there, I've cut a lot of it. I've tightened up the low end by just putting a low cut up, and then if I take that off, if we go down, you can see the information's still there for sort of the upper part, and you can't really hear it, but it can start to eat in once you start to add more and more frequencies on there. So all your mids, your high mids, and your high information that gets stacked on this can just add to it. So straight away I just cut all that off. There's no need for it. All you're using it for is to layer up the original bass line and to give it that low end power. Next up, you just use a limiter, and it's just like, usually I don't tend to reach for limiters, I use a compressor, but I just wanted it to be super tight to go along with the original bass line. So as you can see there, it's not too bad, it's just like a little bit of attenuation there. And then lastly, I've got the sidechain compression going on. Not doing too much, it's giving a little bit of a click if you listen, but when everything's playing you can't really hear it. Next up, I've got sent to a chorus, which is like a tiny little amount, and then I've got sent to Studio Devil distortion, which is you can only just hear it there. After that, I have sent it to the bus where I've got Saturn on here, and this is really good because you can separate. It's like a multi-band distortion, but you can just slightly distort each one, so you can hear a sub on laptop speakers or other things. Excuse me. It is, as you can see, it is really early. So you can hear there, it's a little bit more distorted. So I've got a little bit of warm tube on the start, just a tiny little amount, and then as we get higher, I've got more, and just pulled the mix down, and then the top is full, but you can't really hear that one at all. So there you go. I really encourage a lot of you guys to watch this and experiment with adding subs to yours. If my bass lines or anything are lacking that, I'll go along and I will low cut the original bass line higher to allow for the sub. So it would be just like the sort of the main synth line has a bigger bass in it. Another thing is it's a good way because you're not making one plugin sort of do too much heavy lifting. You're just allowing, like for instance on this one, I'm allowing this synth here to be that sort of mid-range, just driving sort of sound, and then I've got the sub as the bass. So when you combine the two together, you get that full sound. I'm not trying to just push the bass on this and trying to make it work. I'm adding the two together and then giving it a nice full sound. So hopefully you guys got something out of that. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Head over to my Facebook page, give it a like. All the support's really appreciated. And if you've got any tracks, feel free to send them to the SoundCloud listening group, and all the links to all these are in the description. And also, lastly, don't forget to head over to SoundCloud. There's tons of free music, and there's more and more free music going up there all the time. So until next time, I'll see you later.